I think having clarity in climbing, I think, is one of the most important pieces of my life. I started climbing about over a year and like 7 months ago. I don't know if it's necessarily always fun for me. That's in the way, if I go to the gym or if I go outside and it's casual, then it can be fun, but sometimes it gives me a purpose outside of something that feels meaningful, if that makes sense. But it gives me drive and a little bit of relief. I'd say that's why it is so fun and like has that impact. It just gives me that purpose. I train in the gym, the climbing gym. Gym training for me is a means to an end. It's a means to getting outside to climb, because that's where it really means something. I like the gym as much as anybody, but being outdoors is where it's at. But to train for that, I need to work on my finger strength. I'm always trying to improve what I do when I'm in there. I never go in there and say I'm gonna take it easy, but I never really do. I try to push myself as much as I can to get better. Taking rest days is needed though. Always rest when you can. Stretch. I try to make sure I stretch every time I'm in there and outside of it. Just keeping your body consistent so you can perform consistently. That's it. I just try to get in there as much as I can.
In climbing, at least in bouldering, there's a couple different grades. They go by a V system. So you have a V1, which is the easiest, a V2, which is a little bit harder, V4, V5, all the way up to 15, depending on how good you are. Highest I've climbed is a V8, but in this gym, it's probably not going to happen. There's this thing called sandbagging, and that means climbs are way harder than they're supposedly graded. So we'll see what happens today. Purple one right here, this is a V1 Plus. This one's pretty simple. This is for like a beginner climber. There's VB, which is like way beginning, but this is if you've been climbing for like a couple weeks, We'll try it out. For ones like this, it's just a lot of like tension and placement of your body. So like I'll bring my leg over there so I can reach up here. Bring my leg over here so I can reach up there. Bring it over here so I can reach up here. Just kind of switching back and forth from whatever you need to complete the boulder. And then I'll come down. But I started climbing a while ago. The story itself, I guess, is pretty linear. I was just on a pretty bad path. My brother had cancer, and I was in a pretty bad way. I was using pretty terrible outlets, and I noticed that I was falling into a path of negative action. And I'd pushed friends away. I had dipped into too much substance abuse. I noticed my habits were destructive. I was hurting the people around me. I was hurting myself in ways that I just regret now. And after stopping my vices and such, I didn't know where to go. And I read a book about an alpinist doing some mountain climbing, and I thought, I can do that too. And I started climbing outside, and the calmness of climbing alone and climbing in general, of having to keep in mind every part of your body, your feet, your hands, your fingers, your toes, your knees, and having to individually lock and think about these things would kind of almost flush out my negative thoughts and my urges to just kind of act against my own interest, Being able to take the time multiple times a week to just do that, it was like a form of meditation. And now I go 4 to 5 times a week, and I'm making my way up towards that alpinism journey. And I don't think I'll ever stop.
What did I learn from Remy's cancer that I take on? You never know what people are going through. You never know what people are going through. And everybody makes mistakes. Everybody's a person. And to give people a break and treat them right.
Yeah, like the orientation's pretty tight. Yeah. Executed in there pretty good.
Am I training for any big climbs at the moment? Yes. Outside of projects I have locally and indoors and at the gym, I'm trying to make my breach into alpinism. Right now I'm training for one of the White Mountains in New Hampshire, Mount Washington. And the physical training for that is far different than my normal climbing training. It is a lot of endurance and strength training, especially with Mount Washington. I'm doing some ice climbing training, which is just what it sounds like. I'm outside with a buddy of mine who's been doing this for 30 years. He's teaching me technique for ice climbing, self-arrests, placing screws in ice, top roping down ice pillars, and that's just part of it. Snowy mountain hikes in bad conditions, weight training, walking 7 to 8 miles with 50 pounds on my back, straight, with no brakes, as best I can, being on the Stairmaster and crunching out as many sets as I can, just trying to condition my body well enough to the point where I know the physical aspect won't be a problem. You can always try to go up, I'll say that, but that doesn't mean you're gonna make it to the top, and you might have to turn around. But a colleague of mine a while back, he told me that summiting is optional, going home is not. You need to go home, you don't need to make it to the top. And I'm gonna keep that close in mind when I go for that. I would say I have lofty goals for what I can do now, but I do have goals. Rock climbing is something that has become a part of my life, and I want it to stay that way, and I'm willing to dedicate a lot of myself to it now. Mount Washington will just be the start. I want to venture into alpinism, and I want it to go forward. I want to do the whites. I want to take care of some pretty lofty mountains in Canada and Alaska, and then I want to move over to Asia or Pakistan and start checking those off the list. It's expensive, so I got to make money first. But yeah, I want to be I don't know. Not many people get to ask me about the goals of it, so it's a tough thing to answer, but I want to be able to check off arbitrary climbs, but in my head they'll mean so much more. I want to do Nanga Parbat. I want to do crazy things like, K2, but who knows if I'll ever be able to. But if I keep it in my head that I will, then I at least can get pretty damn close,